Continues next on AM 560, The Answer.
This hourly segment brought to you by Unleash Your Wealth with Raj Shah and Rick Borick this Saturday at 7 a.m. and 2 p.m. Learn more at scwealthadvisors.com.
Now, from the Signature Bank Studios.
Insert Democrat socialist here.
Runs the Democratic House floor for 30 plus years running. He's promising this and he's stealing that. Where can you get that kind of money? He's using your house like his own piggy bank. You ought to know by now. You can pay off your house here in Illinois, but you can never keep up with the taxes. Oh, how it's always been the plan to have a taxpayer pay, no doubt. Not a matter of if anymore, but when. You're moving out. I said, when you're moving out.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. So we brought you Stacy Davis Gates, CTU boss. We brought you her appearance on WVON recently, in which she addressed the seeming poor academic achievement of CPS students, with less than 1 in 3 that can read at grade level, less than 1 in 5 that can do math at grade level. We talked about it a bit yesterday, but since Ted Dabrowski over at Wirepoints has done so much work on K through 12 education over so many years, figured give him a chance to weigh in to reset. This is her explanation for the poor test scores, the the NAEP test scores. Just leave it at that.
When people talk about achievement as a classroom teacher, I know that it is not linear. And the way in which, we think about learning and think about achievement is really and truly based on testing, which at best is junk science rooted in white supremacy. Now, if you have another hour, I can get into why standardized tests are born out of the eugenics movement. And the eugenics movement has always sought to see Black people as inferior to those that are non-Black. So when people talk to me about testing alone, I have to trouble the waters and challenge that, because you can't test Black children with an instrument that was born to prove their inferiority. It just can't do that.
And we have extended an invite, we said we would, to Stacy Davis Gates to give her that hour to make that case with the detail that she requires.
Oh, I mean...
That would be great.
It would be wonderful if she could come on and explain herself, but I doubt it. But
yeah, I don't.
A girl can dream, right, Dan?
I don't hold out too much hope either. Anyway, Ted Dabrowski is the president of Wirepoints, wirepoints.org. He joins us for our standard Tuesday confab. It's not as good as Musk and Trump, but we try. Ted, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Good morning, Dan. Good morning, Amy.
So, you don't have an hour, but I will give you a chance to react to what Stacy Davis Gates said about testing. You can't measure Black students by these tests rooted in white supremacy.
Yeah, it's the most. I guess you can always say it's the most racist comments coming from her. For me, the more she opens her mouth, the better, and the more she could keep trying to describe what her view of the world is, the better, because she and the union have done so much damage, and of course the damage is done way before in the core and that group of let's call it, we have to call them just radical leaders. It's been horrible at CPS and CPU, but they've taken it to a new extreme, and they've gotten so, I guess, it's both so radical and militant that it's going to be hard to take the power back from them. But we can't have these kind of people running the place. And and what she's doing is she's perpetuating these reading levels, and these kids can't read. And it's a national crisis, but I think it's extreme here. I hope she keeps opening her mouth until people figure out just how bad she is for the future of Black children, brown children, and any kids that are at CPS, frankly.
It's really interesting to talk about K through 12 education here as compared to Texas, where Governor Abbott went to the mat on expanding school choice, and he had to challenge, and he did successfully, several Republican legislators who were in the pockets of the teachers' unions down there. And now we find that almost a supermajority in some demographics, supermajority of Texans support school choice. 55% of Democrats do. The support for scholarships relatively comparable between men and women, 67 and 62%. White, Latino, Black, 63, 64, 70, respectively. Urban, 67. Suburban, 64. Rural, 63. In some, the support for school choice in Texas is now broad and deep, such that to be opposed to school choice puts you in political danger, not to be opposed to the teachers' unions. Well, there are a lot of black families in Texas. There are a lot of Latino families in Texas. So why can't we make the same case here? It would seem. I don't.
Well, yeah,
I
mean,
know.
look, first of all, there's so much traction between the unions and the bureaucrats and CPS and the lawmakers. We're up against a huge thing. And what we haven't figured out, and I'll tell you this, I've gone around the state a lot, as you know, traveling and talking to parents and all that. And most parents don't know what a voucher is. They don't know what an education savings account is. Now, if you tell them what one is, they want it. And that's why they do so well in those surveys, because the surveys explain, would you like for your kid to have a choice to go somewhere else? And the parents say, hell yeah. But most of them don't even know that there is such a thing, because we don't have such a thing in Illinois. So I think, and this is one of my biggest, let's call it, things that I want to go after, is we need to make it toxic for lawmakers to oppose school choice. And that's what guys like Abbott are doing in Texas, and
Right.
And what happened with the governor in Iowa. They've made it toxic and to oppose it. But in Illinois, we're so passive. Our side, if you want to call it our side, those who want literacy, haven't gotten together, made a campaign strong. And it's a campaign that overwhelms the political establishment, that overwhelms the educational establishment with just how bad things are, so that it becomes toxic for a lawmaker to support the current system, and makes it toxic into the post-school choice. We're so far away from that right now, Dan. But I do believe, with how things are, that we can do that. It just means coming together and figuring out how to create those campaigns.
All right, so in a few days, the DNC is going to be here. I was just at O'Hare and saw they dolled up the place and everything's getting ready. Do you believe Superintendent Snelling when he says that if there is some civil unrest, we're going to engage and make arrests?
Well, it's funny. I believe him. I don't know if I believe Johnson, and and who's in control. And it's always a big question of who's in control around here. But I get this feeling that Snelling would like to take action. It's a gut feel. I don't have enough data behind that. But I do believe that. But Johnson will be very cautious. Pritzker will probably be cautious at first, and only if it gets ugly will they act. So I'm worried. I'm cautiously optimistic that nothing's going to happen, but at the same time, I'm a realist to know that the guys that are in charge here in Illinois can easily make a big mess of this.
And by the way, speaking of Illinois, you've got this billboard campaign. I saw around town. Illinois Democrats balance the budget. Illinois Democrats record job growth. These billboards to welcome the new Bolsheviks from around the country to, you lie to me, I lie to you. We're all around the chestnut tree. The sort of recasting or continued casting, I guess, of Illinois as this bustling center of economic vibrancy.
Yeah, we're doing so well, and they're going to do that, and they have to do that because the reality is quite the opposite. So they can't let that sink in, and they're going to. I saw one of the signs that said record job growth. I mean, there's nothing that could be further from the truth in that billboard. I didn't see the others, and so along those same lines of what you were talking about earlier with on the show. They've got to keep the misinformation going, and that's just the way it is. What's amazing is, and you kind of come back to your point that you made about James Toronto. uncritical coverage. What we really need is critical coverage of Chicago. Most murders in the country for 13 years in a row. You've got some of the highest black unemployment, all that stuff. The critical uncoverage of that is detrimental to the actual victims, whether they're crime victims or black victims, or economic victims. We're missing it all out, and we're going to see probably one of the biggest shows and one of the biggest lies ever done in the country, and it's going to be right here because of the DNC in Chicago.
The higher education here, Western Illinois is hemorrhaging, and some of the other so-called directional schools, too, may be in not quite as dire straits, but also trending in the wrong direction in terms of enrollment and thus viability. Western Illinois is laying off staff, is facing a significant budget deficit with respect to its capacity. I don't know if we can get Dan Webb and Frank Winters to come in and save their alma mater. What say you? What's going on in higher ed in Illinois?
Well, it's the reckoning we were supposed to have a long time ago, and I did quite a few deep dives with the team a few years ago. And Western Illinois got 12,000 students a decade ago. Now it's going to be fighting for half.
Oh my God.
So it's one of the biggest things has been the administrative bloat, and we track that. It's massive administrative bloat. We've talked about the pensions a lot at the higher ed. They're massive, and so you've got these costs. So what happens is costs go way up. And
but also too, that's the interesting dynamic is the drop in enrollment. So it's one thing to have the bloat. It's another thing for people who, just whatever source, wherever they were recruiting students from, probably a lot relatively locally in Western Illinois. It's all dried up. Could some of that have to do with the people aren't there anymore? The exodus.
Yeah, well, that's a big part of it too. And we wrote about that last week. That we're losing. People like to say, "Oh, we're losing the old people." No way. I mean, we are losing the old people. Right? Those 65 and over. We're losing the wealthy people, but we're losing the young people as well, and we're losing every single demographic. So the point is that it gets really, really expensive in these schools, and we got way out of control for a few years. They're trying to rein it back in terms of cost of attending these universities. But when you combine that with the outmigration, and you combine that with the bloat and the pensions and the costs, it's a perfect storm. And here we go. And it's the same storm we're having, and maybe it's a little bit more, hyper at the universities, but it's the same storm we're having in Illinois, period.
Speaking of this grotesque comedy called Chicagoland in the state of Illinois. So Lori Lightfoot is a goo-goo municipal consultant now. She's poured over the books in Dalton, and she finds profligate spending going on.
No.
And then we get this story. The $1.16 billion deal that privatized Chicago's parking meters and whose private investors long ago recouped their investment and who Chicago long ago spent the $1.6 billion, even though it's a 75-year deal.
Oh, my gosh.
Well, it's going to get worse because of what Lori Lightfoot did. The city reclaimed some 4,000 parking spaces during the shutdown during COVID, and then returned a little bit more than half of those spaces to the parking meter consortium a couple of months later because the demand for parking stay at home. And now they're in litigation where the parking meter company says its losses from the seizure of parking meters were somewhere in the neighborhood of $320 million. And the city's expert says it's $120 million. They're in arbitration, and they're fighting this out. So in addition to the fleecing that Chicago taxpayers took with the original deal, that's as under Daley, all the seeds that were now sown, and we're now reaping the poisonous crop. Lori Lightfoot made that deal at, according to the city's own estimates, $120 million worse. And she's the goo-goo that's telling Tiffany Henyard about profligate spending.
Yeah, well, she's the expert for that stuff. This is another of these. Well, it happens every couple of years, right? There's all these costs that just keep piling on, and this is the kind of mistake they've made, whether it's skyways or parking meters. It happens over and over. And what's interesting now about this one is that it's starting to pile on. We may be at $1 billion deficit again in Chicago after the COVID money is running out. here comes the same old stuff again. It's back to reporting what we did, 4 and 5 years ago. We're going to start doing it again. It's that you got the $1 billion deficits both at CPS and at the city of Chicago, 2 different $1 billion shortfalls. Let's see where it goes. But it's this kind of horrific management that comes to light, and here's Lightfoot again.
Yeah, right. I mean, if the people don't change, why should their representatives? Ted Dabrowski, President, Wirepoints, wirepoints.org, all things Illinois policy related. Thanks, Ted.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, and he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
It's news, opinion, insight. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Do you have jewelry with sentimental value that needs repairing? Hi, it's Mike Gallagher. I'm a customer of family-owned Roland's Jewelers in downtown Libertyville because it's a place I trust. Their in-house master jeweler does impeccable work, and jewelry comes back repaired in perfect condition and looks the same as the day you bought it. That's a great feeling. Roland's also specializes in custom design. They'll work with you